A profound stillness settles over the evening atmosphere as daylight begins to fade. Within the walls of a deserted fortress situated along the prestigious northern coastline of Long Island, tiny particles of dust perform an elegant ballet through the remaining beams of diminishing sunlight. The wooden planks beneath, which were once buffed and polished until they sparkled with mirror-like brilliance, now rest warped, splintered, and broken from years of abandonment. The interior walls that formerly resonated with the melodious sounds of orchestral performances and the cheerful voices of distinguished guests now bear the marks of spray-painted messages and layers of accumulated soot from countless small fires. Droplets of rainwater make their way through the numerous gaps and openings in what was once a magnificent slate roof, creating small puddles on the marble flooring that has lost its lustrous shine due to prolonged absence of care and attention. This magnificent structure is known as Oheka Castle, or perhaps more accurately, what time and circumstance have left behind of this once spectacular residence. Throughout these vacant corridors and empty chambers, the passage of time seems to have paused indefinitely. A full 100 years in the past, these very same hallways pulsated with extraordinary wealth and lavish entertainment. In the present moment, only the ethereal spirits and memories of yesteryear seem to wander through the desolate spaces. This represents the final glimpse of an ambitious dream slowly crumbling and deteriorating into complete destruction. In the exterior courtyard area, persistent weeds force their way upward through the fractured stone pavement where expensive luxury automobiles once parked in neat rows. The sound of glass fragments crunching beneath one's footsteps comes from the countless shattered window panes that now stare outward with a vacant, lifeless expression, resembling empty eye sockets in a forgotten face. There exists no electrical power whatsoever, no source of heating or warmth to combat the elements. The entire estate lacks both functional plumbing systems and any form of electricity. It has been systematically stripped of all its exquisite furnishings, artwork and decorative pieces, leaving it completely exposed to the harsh forces of nature and weather. A garden area that once received meticulous daily care and attention, visible just beyond the broken doorways, has transformed into an untamed wilderness where nature has reclaimed total dominion. The decorative fountains that once shot elegant streams of water skyward now sit completely dry and filled with fallen leaves, while the ornamental statues have become covered with thick layers of green moss and climbing vines. The magnificent splendor of this forgotten palace remains faintly discernible in the graceful architectural lines of the structure and in the subtle whispers of what was once an elaborate French-inspired garden design, yet all of this beauty lies buried beneath layers of deterioration and neglect. The entire scene presents itself as simultaneously hauntingly beautiful and profoundly sorrowful, standing as a lasting monument to vanished glory and faded magnificence. A solitary individual stands positioned in the center of the great reception hall, absorbing the melancholic spectacle that surrounds them on all sides. This lone visitor allows their imagination to reconstruct the past, envisioning the crystal chandeliers illuminated and sparkling brilliantly, with the harmonious music of a long-vanished orchestra filling every corner of the air with melody. For a fleeting moment, through the powerful lens of the mind's imaginative eye, the castle springs back to vibrant life once more. Distinguished gentlemen dressed in formal black tie attire and elegant ladies adorned in flowing silk gowns glide gracefully through the grand ballroom, while the delicate fragrance of fresh roses drifts inward from the meticulously maintained formal gardens outside. However, in the blink of an eye, this beautiful vision dissolves and vanishes completely. Only the heavy silence returns, pressing down upon the space. This castle seems to hold its breath, suspended precariously between the realms of cherished memory and complete oblivion. Every single step the visitor takes produces an echo that reverberates throughout the vast emptiness. The magnificent grand staircase remains structurally sound and firm, its wrought iron railing feeling cold and unwelcoming to the touch. Otto Hermann Kahn, the visionary gentleman who conceived and constructed this extraordinary place, insisted with absolute determination that it be constructed entirely of steel and reinforced concrete, rendering it completely fireproof and virtually indestructible. This particular construction methodology ultimately saved Oheka from total destruction over the subsequent decades. Individuals with malicious intent have attempted to burn the structure down more than 100 separate times throughout its history. Yet each and every time, the flames eventually died out and extinguished themselves against the remarkably stubborn concrete walls that refused to yield. The castle itself demonstrates a persistent refusal to vanish from existence. It stands courageously defiant, serving as an architectural ghost from the legendary Gilded Age, refusing to surrender either to the relentless march of time or to the destructive power of flames. The main doorway stands wide open, gaping vulnerably to all the natural elements. As the final rays of daylight filter through the shattered glass windows, the light illuminates a scene of elegant devastation. A crumbling castle waits patiently, anticipating either its final structural collapse or perhaps a miraculous rebirth and restoration. How did circumstances lead to this unfortunate situation? What series of events and misfortunes befell this magnificent estate that it should ultimately end up consumed by such darkness and complete desolation? The explanation lies buried deep within the past, in an extraordinary age characterized by boundless ambition and extraordinary excess. To fully understand Oheka Castle's heartbreaking fate, we must first journey back to its very inception, to the dreams and aspirations of the remarkable man who built it, the perpetual outsider who refused to accept society's limitations. Before there existed a castle standing proudly upon the hill, there existed a determined man who never quite belonged to the world he inhabited. At the dawn of the 20th century, New York City sparkled and glittered with unprecedented wealth and prosperity. Skyscrapers climbed higher into the sky with each passing year, reaching toward the heavens. Immense fortunes were being built upon the foundations of expanding railroads, industrial steel production, and vast oil reserves. To possess great wealth was to possess tremendous power, and to possess power was to command visibility and respect in society. Yet among those privileged men of vast money and magnificent marble mansions, there still existed exclusive gates and doors that simply could not be opened, regardless of one's financial resources. Otto Hermann Kahn understood this harsh reality all too well from personal experience. He was a German-born financial banker who had journeyed to America chasing the promise of limitless possibility, a gentleman of mathematical precision, sharp intellect, and refined cultural taste. He dressed himself impeccably in the finest tailored garments, spoke with eloquent articulation, and generously donated millions of dollars to support the arts and cultural institutions. He possessed the financial means to purchase virtually anything his heart desired, except for one thing that money could not buy: genuine acceptance into the highest circles of established society. In the judgmental eyes of New York's old aristocratic families with their generations of inherited wealth, he represented something they could never overlook or forgive. An outsider, an immigrant, someone different. He was Jewish, a man born on foreign soil, a new arrival in a world strictly ruled by family names that had been wealthy and powerful for multiple generations. The established elite permitted him entry into their corporate boardrooms where his financial expertise proved valuable, but they would never admit him into their exclusive country clubs and private social gatherings. They openly admired and benefited from his substantial money and business acumen, but they whispered disapprovingly about his ancestry and bloodline behind closed doors. And though he maintained a polite smile through all of these subtle insults and rejections, Otto Kahn never once forgot the deep humiliation and pain. In the year 1905, fate dealt him an exceptionally cruel reminder of just how fragile and fleeting the concept of belonging truly could be. His beloved country estate in New Jersey, known as Cedar Court, burned completely to the ground in a devastating fire. The uncontrollable flames devoured absolutely everything of value. Priceless artwork, expensive furniture, irreplaceable personal memories, even his most treasured possession, his favorite violin that he had played since childhood. In the immediate aftermath, newspaper reporters wrote that the wealthy banker's mansion had gone up in smoke and was completely lost. But to Otto Kahn personally, the loss represented something far more profound than mere property damage. It felt as though the world had stripped him bare and exposed his vulnerability twice over, first through social rejection and now through material loss. In response, he made himself a solemn promise that would change the course of his life. He would build something so extraordinary that the world couldn't possibly ignore it. Something grand and magnificent enough that it wouldn't merely demand grudging acceptance from high society, it would command their unconditional respect and admiration. A place that couldn't be denied entry, couldn't be destroyed by fire, and couldn't be casually dismissed as inferior. He would build his own private kingdom according to his own terms and vision. And this time, he vowed with absolute determination, not even the most destructive fire would have the power to take it away from him. The ambitious idea began to form and crystallize in his mind like a small spark catching wind and growing into a flame. He wanted elevation and height, a place that stood physically above everyone else both literally in architectural terms and symbolically in social significance. He wanted permanence and lasting endurance, a substantial monument that would outlive the temporary prejudice of his generation. And he wanted extraordinary beauty, a true architectural masterpiece worthy of the art and culture he loved so deeply and passionately. Therefore, Otto Kahn went searching not for society's approval or validation, but for the perfect parcel of land. He eventually found it located on the prestigious north shore of Long Island, a gentle sloping hill that overlooked the scenic Cold Spring Harbor. However, Kahn didn't want merely a hill among other hills. He wanted a commanding summit that rose above everything surrounding it. So he issued orders for workers to physically move and relocate earth by the ton until the land itself rose substantially higher, until he had successfully created his own mountain positioned at the edge of the sea. From that elevated ground standing tall, he gazed outward across the famous Gold Coast where America's wealthiest men had built their elaborate summer palaces and country retreats, and he whispered quietly to himself with satisfaction, "Now they'll have no choice but to look upward to see me." The remarkable rise of Otto Hermann Kahn represents a story that begins not with a castle structure, but with a man possessing extraordinary vision and relentless drive. Otto Hermann Kahn was born in the year 1867 in the country of Germany, and he rose steadily from modest middle-class origins to eventually become one of the most powerful and influential financiers operating in America. By the early years of the 20th century, he had achieved the position of senior partner at the prestigious investment banking firm of Kuhn, Loeb and Company, where he helped to reorganize major railroad systems and steadily amassed a vast personal fortune through shrewd investments. He became widely known and recognized for his impeccable personal style and for his extraordinary generosity in supporting the arts, music and opera. Some society columnists and newspaper writers even referred to him as the unofficial king of New York's cultural and financial world. However, Otto Kahn's impressive ascent to prominence and social standing was certainly not without significant challenges and obstacles. He was Jewish during an era in American history when high society clubs and exclusive establishments frequently barred men of his religious faith from membership, regardless of their accomplishments. Despite his tremendous wealth and elevated business status, Kahn regularly faced discrimination and subtle rejection. At his country residence located in Morristown, New Jersey, he was famously and publicly refused entry to the local country club solely and explicitly because of his ancestry and religious background. This deeply personal snub wounded him profoundly on an emotional level, but it also ignited a powerful spark of inner resolve and determination. If the old money aristocracy with their inherited fortunes wouldn't willingly have him as an equal member, he would create an entirely new world of his own design, one grand and magnificent enough to completely eclipse and surpass theirs in every conceivable way. Around approximately the same time period, personal tragedy struck yet another painful blow to his life. Kahn's first country estate, the aforementioned Cedar Court, went up in flames during a devastating fire in 1905, a catastrophic blaze that reduced his cherished home and his valuable art collection to nothing but ashes and memories. These two painful experiences occurring in close succession, social exclusion based on prejudice and a beloved house lost to uncontrollable fire, planted the initial seeds of a grand vision deep within Otto Kahn's determined mind. Otto Kahn was fundamentally a man of restless ambition and forward momentum. His personal family motto proclaimed, "Ever restlessly forward," and he lived his entire life faithfully by this guiding principle. Determined not to be deterred, discouraged, or defeated by prejudice or personal misfortune, he made the decisive choice to build something that would stand as an undeniable symbol of his success, refinement, and cultural sophistication. If others in society could have their exclusive clubs and inherited mansions passed down through generations, he would have something infinitely greater in scope and magnificence. A private castle, a personal paradise of his own inspired design and vision. In the year 1914, as the continent of Europe teetered dangerously on the brink of the First World War and America danced carelessly toward the upcoming Jazz Age, Otto Kahn purchased an expansive 443 acres of prime undeveloped land on Long Island's prestigious North Shore in a small hamlet known as West Hills. This particular area had earned the nickname of the Gold Coast, a scenic stretch of coastline where America's richest and most powerful families maintained their lavish summer estates and retreats. Here, upon this carefully chosen land, Kahn would permanently etch his lasting legacy into the very landscape itself. The specific location Kahn selected was both strategically brilliant and poetically symbolic. The land sat positioned at the highest natural point on all of Long Island, a prominent hilltop offering sweeping panoramic views of Cold Spring Harbor and the gently rolling hills extending far beyond. In actual fact, the hill itself did not exist in its current elevated form until Kahn specifically ordered it created through human effort. Dedicated workers toiled continuously for 2 full years, methodically piling and moving earth to artificially elevate the ground to precisely the height required so that his future mansion could literally and figuratively overlook the entire world around it. This would not simply be a comfortable home or residence. It would be a bold statement of achievement. From this entirely man-made promontory would rise an palatial residence designed to rival the grandest chateaux of Europe. He hired the renowned and respected architectural firm of Delano and Aldrich to create and design his palace according to his exacting specifications. Absolutely no expense would be spared in the construction. Kahn insisted on one crucial feature above all others that would not be compromised. The castle must be completely and totally fireproof. Never again would he be forced to watch helplessly as his home burned down before his eyes. Thus, the detailed architectural plans called for a structure built primarily of steel, reinforced concrete, and solid stone. It would be one of the very first totally fireproof residential buildings ever constructed anywhere. The floors, walls, and structural beams would all be reinforced so substantially that Oheka Castle might successfully defy even the most destructive flames of potential disaster. Kahn envisioned elaborate gardens as splendid and breathtaking as those surrounding the Palace of Versailles in France. He brought in the famous Olmsted Brothers landscape architecture firm, the sons of Frederick Law Olmsted, who had designed Central Park, to lay out the extensive grounds according to classical principles. The landscape design would include multiple terraced lawns arranged in descending levels, elegant reflecting pools that would mirror the sky, productive orchards growing fruit, natural woodlands for peaceful walks, and a grand avenue of mature trees lining the main approach to create a dramatic entrance. There would be included a private 18-hole golf course for recreation, one of the largest and most technologically advanced greenhouses in all of America for year-round flowers, extensive stables to house thoroughbred horses, multiple tennis courts for sporting activities, an indoor swimming pool lined with tile, and even a landing strip capable of accommodating the newly invented airplanes. Otto Kahn's ambitious dream was not simply a mansion structure, but rather a completely self-contained world of luxury and sophisticated leisure activities. The main house would be designed as a French-style chateau constructed of beautiful golden sandstone with grand architectural turrets and steep roof lines piercing dramatically skyward. It would feature sprawling wings extending in multiple directions, interior courtyards for privacy, and formal gardens tumbling down the hillside in symmetrical perfection following classical design principles. In Kahn's detailed vision, this magnificent estate would be a special place where art and music would flourish abundantly, where the most influential and interesting people of the age would eagerly gather under his hospitable roof as honored guests. He had determined that he would not only match the lifestyle of the old elite, but actually surpass them in every measure. The gilded dream of Oheka Castle was officially set in motion with great anticipation. When Otto Kahn broke ground and began construction in 1917, the undertaking wasn't merely a building project or real estate investment. It represented emotional catharsis and healing for a wounded soul. The thunderous roar of heavy machinery, the rhythmic clanging of steel beams being positioned, and the distinctive smell of wet concrete being poured were all elements that provided a kind of therapeutic remedy for a determined man who was absolutely resolved to defy his painful past. He walked the active construction site daily without fail, his expensive leather shoes sinking into the churned earth, his tailored coat fluttering dramatically in the strong wind as he watched his cherished vision gradually take tangible shape before his eyes. He told his architects and contractors one thing above all else with unwavering insistence: this home will never burn no matter what circumstances arise. The detailed blueprints reflected that personal obsession with fire prevention. Every single wall would be constructed of solid concrete rather than wood. Every structural beam would be steel rather than timber. Even the library, intended to be the warm intellectual heart of the house filled with books, would be built with plaster that was skillfully painted to look like natural wood so that no fire could ever touch or consume it. The house would not just stand strong against the test of time, it would stand impervious against personal tragedy itself. Skilled workers laid the massive foundations deeper into the earth than any mansion constructed before it, pouring hundreds of tons of concrete and steel reinforcement into the Long Island soil. The constant sound of hammers striking and drills boring filled the air continuously for years. Powerful steam engines transported heavy materials from New York City on a daily basis. On some particularly busy days, the hilltop construction site looked more like an industrial factory than the location of a future palace. But in Otto Kahn's visionary mind, he could already see the finished product with perfect clarity. A magnificent French chateau rising majestically out of the earth like a beautiful dream turned solid and real. Tall, elegant windows gleaming brilliantly under the morning sun's rays. Elaborate terraced gardens stepping gracefully down toward the distant horizon. A private paradise born not from inherited privilege, but from personal will and determination. He spared absolutely no expense whatsoever. Every single stone was specially imported from distant quarries, every corridor and room meticulously planned down to the smallest detail. This wasn't merely a home for one single lifetime. It was intended as an heirloom to be passed down to eternity, a permanent statement carved into the skyline proclaiming that the outsider had finally arrived and conquered. 5 long years later, after countless hours of labor, the last wooden scaffold finally came down and was removed. From the highest terrace point, Otto Kahn stood and looked out at his completed creation with deep satisfaction. A golden palace crowned beautifully in slate and steel rose before him. His reflection shimmered in the perfectly still water of the reflecting pools far below. He had successfully built a fortress not merely of accumulated wealth, but of personal resilience and determination. Fireproof against flames, proof against criticism regarding faith, and foolproof in its construction quality. This was far more than mere architecture and construction. It was revenge against society's rejection made beautiful and elegant. The construction phase officially began in 1917 with tremendous energy. Caravans of dedicated workers and skilled artisans arrived at the West Hills property location every morning. Expert stonemasons, talented carpenters, and experienced steel workers swarmed across the site from early dawn until late dusk. Overseeing all of them with careful attention to detail were the architects William Delano and Chester Aldrich, faithfully translating Kahn's lavish ideas and requirements into actual brick-and-mortar reality. Piece by piece, section by section, the castle gradually took recognizable shape atop the specially constructed hill. The chateau emerged with an astounding 127 rooms sprawling over an incredible 109,000 square feet of interior space, making it the second largest private residence in all of America. Every single aspect of the construction reflected Kahn's absolute insistence on quality craftsmanship and permanent endurance. Where other wealthy builders might use traditional wood, Kahn insisted on concrete and stone. This was a house being built for the ages, to last centuries. He poured an absolute fortune into the ambitious project, approximately $11 million at that time, equivalent to over $150 million in today's currency. But he remained determined that his dream castle would not meet the same tragic fate as Cedar Court had met. By 1919, after 5 years of ceaseless construction activity, Oheka Castle was finally complete and ready for occupation. It stood proudly as a true masterpiece of the Gold Coast region, hailed enthusiastically by newspapers as the finest country house in America. On its first day of completion, the castle's stone towers cast long dramatic shadows over the impeccable lawns. The Kahn family, consisting of Otto, his devoted wife Addie, and their 4 children, moved into their new home. Walking through it in complete awe of its magnificent scale and extraordinary beauty, they christened it Oheka, a clever acronym formed from Otto Hermann Kahn's own name. As one approached through the impressive iron gates, the monogram Oheka gleamed like a royal crest announcing arrival. For Otto Kahn personally, this was far more than just a comfortable home or residence. It was the tangible fulfillment of his gilded dream made real. In the first glorious summers at Oheka, Otto Kahn would stroll peacefully through the formal gardens at dusk, satisfied smiles playing on his lips. Here was the spectacular view he had engineered into existence through determination and resources, the highest point on all of Long Island, giving him sunsets that seemed to linger just a moment longer for his personal pleasure. The castle's beautiful limestone walls glowed golden in that evening light. He had successfully built his own palace to rival the noblest estates of Europe. No country club could deny him now. He had created a club of one where the only members admitted were those he personally invited into his own realm. As soon as the paint was dry, Otto and Addie began enthusiastically filling their new home with the best of everything money could buy. They imported fine European furniture, antique tapestries, and valuable artworks. The castle's formidable exterior gave way to interiors of comfort and charm. Kahn was especially proud of a secret passage built cleverly into a bookcase that led to a private office, a whimsical feature that delighted visitors. Every corner reflected thoughtful design and personal flair. With the estate fully operational, a small army of staff kept it running seamlessly. 126 full-time servants maintained the castle and grounds, including butlers, footmen, maids, chefs, gardeners, grooms, chauffeurs, and guards, all moving in a rhythm of precision. The estate was alive with motion day and night. It was a world that appeared effortless, the true mark of luxury. Then came the guests. Otto Kahn was a consummate host who relished bringing interesting people together under his roof. During the Gilded Age of the 1920s, Oheka Castle became a social hub where royalty, heads of state, business magnates and Hollywood stars mingled amidst extravagant entertainments. He often had string quartets performing in one room and jazz bands playing in another. The likes of Charlie Chaplin, Enrico Caruso, and George Gershwin were rumored guests. The ballroom saw opulent costume balls. The dining hall hosted feasts on gold-trimmed china. No guest left Oheka unimpressed. In June 1920, Otto Kahn's daughter was married at the castle. The wedding filled the estate with joy. For Otto Kahn, seeing his daughter marry amid the grandeur of the home he built must have been a proud and emotional moment. The castle was the backdrop of his family's memories. In those golden days, Oheka Castle was not forgotten at all. It was the center of attention and the height of luxury. At its zenith in the mid-1920s, Oheka Castle was a golden paradise. Sunlight flooded its terraces. The smell of cut grass and roses filled the air. Inside, Otto Kahn might be found in his favorite spot, the music room, listening to a private recital by world-class musicians. He entertained people not just for their titles but for their talent and wit. Oheka became a crossroads of culture and power, and Otto was the genial conductor orchestrating it all. As night fell, the castle transformed. Hundreds of lights glowed across its facade. Guests in evening dress strolled the terraces, marveling at the reflection of the moon in the long pools below. Within Oheka's orbit, life was a celebration of art, beauty, and indulgence. But in 1929, the Roaring Twenties ended with the crash of the stock market. The Great Depression set in. Even men like Otto Kahn felt its strain. The lavish parties became fewer. Kahn aged. His health weakened. In March 1934, Otto Hermann Kahn passed away from a heart attack. He was 67 years old. In that moment, Oheka lost its master. The visionary of this castle was gone. Kahn's passing marked the close of Oheka's golden age. The castle had shone like a beacon through the Jazz Age, but now its future was uncertain. No longer the scene of high society gatherings, it risked becoming a gilded relic of memories. The world outside was marching on. The depression deepened. Conflict loomed once more in Europe. The castle that once symbolized triumph now seemed a burden in a changing time. After Otto Kahn's passing, the castle carried on quietly under his widow Addie and a reduced staff. But times had changed. Maintaining a 127-room palace was an immense financial drain. By 1939 the family could no longer afford it. Addie Kahn sold the estate to the welfare fund of the New York sanitation workers. The palace of a banker visionary became a retirement home. For 3 years Oheka, renamed Sanita, served as a convalescent home. It was a strange twist of fate. The castle of ambition turned shelter for working people. With the onset of World War II, the U.S. Merchant Marine took over the estate to train radio operators. The ornate rooms became classrooms and barracks. Grand halls echoed with Morse code instead of music. By the mid-1940s, the estate had already been broken up. The vast 443 acres shrank to a fraction of its size. In 1948, Oheka became a boarding school, the Eastern Military Academy. For 3 decades the castle housed young cadets. But to make it functional, its beauty was sacrificed. The gardens were altered, the grand rooms subdivided. By the late 1970s the school faced financial troubles and closed. The cadets left. The castle stood empty again. With the closing of the academy in 1979, Oheka entered its most challenging years. The grand rooms that once housed laughter were now cold and barren. Paint peeled, rain seeped through ceilings and vandals roamed. Over the next few years, more than 100 fires were set inside its walls. Yet the structure refused to burn. Otto Kahn's fireproof design saved it again and again. The castle stood weathered but standing. By the early 1980s, Oheka was nearly in ruins. Graffiti covered the walls. Gardens turned to wilderness. Locals called it abandoned. It seemed destined for demolition, but the community fought to save it. They searched for anyone who could rescue the castle. In 1984 that person arrived. A developer named Gary Melius purchased Oheka Castle, seeing potential where others saw wreckage. The castle had no utilities, no windows, no doors. Yet Melius began what would become one of the largest private residential restorations in American history. Out of deterioration, Oheka was about to rise again. Gary Melius bought Oheka in 1984 for $1.5 million. It was little more than a shell. Over the next years he spent millions restoring it. He replaced the roof with slate from the same quarry used in Kahn's time. He installed over 200 new windows and doors. The grand staircase's ironwork was repaired and reinstalled. Every room was cleaned, replastered, and brought back to life. The gardens were recreated from historical plans. Pools were rebuilt, fountains reinstalled, thousands of trees and hedges replanted. By the late 1980s, the castle was weatherproof and glowing again. Milius faced financial challenges and sold the property briefly, but eventually reacquired it. Restoration continued through the 1990s and 2000s, transforming Oheka into a shining landmark once more. After decades and approximately $40 million of work, Oheka Castle was reborn. It became a luxury hotel, event venue, and historic site. Celebrations returned, echoing the joy once felt there. The castle joined the National Register of Historic Places. America's once overlooked palace had been resurrected. Oheka Castle stands magnificent once more, a living relic of America's Gilded Age. Its story endures as a testament to ambition, resilience, and the passage of time. Walking through its halls now, one can sense the layers of history within its walls. Oheka's revival brought it back into popular culture. It appears in films, music videos, and series. Its grandeur inspired literary visions and even represented grand estates in cinema. Every year, thousands visit to hear its story, to see the grand staircase, and to walk through gardens that once lay neglected. Yet, Oheka's journey continues with both triumphs and challenges. Financial efforts have followed with ongoing dedication to keep the estate preserved. Even today, its survival remains a careful balance of passion and preservation. Oheka Castle is more than the sum of its parts. It is a living entity that requires care. From Otto Kahn to Gary Milius, it has needed visionaries to protect it. Its legacy is both a triumph and a reminder that greatness always requires dedication. As the sun sets and lights flicker on, Oheka's silhouette glows against the twilight sky. Admiration, reflection, and hope mix in equal measure. The story of America's once overlooked palace has become one of rediscovery and resilience. History rises and transforms, yet beauty endures. Oheka stands as proof that dreams can face challenges, but with care and determination, they can also be rebuilt. America's palace is remembered once more. It lives on, an enduring emblem of an age long past and a beacon of hope that even after challenges, something beautiful can be found again.